he told Tom he shouldn't have shot it because he said there's going to be, we're going to have trouble over it. And sure enough, the trouble just started.
Hi everybody, this is Bill, one of the Cryptid Brothers, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and thank you so much for clicking on tonight's episode. You're gonna love it. We actually have a special guest, and we've got 3 crazy stories that are all just amazing, so you're gonna want to listen to the very end. And again, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, for sharing. And so we want to know where you're from, so leave in the comment sections if you wish where you're from. We have listeners from around the world. And soon we're going to have some thermal and infrared footage for you guys and gals. That'll be coming up, so we'll just get going. So my next guest is a very special guest. I'll just let him introduce himself. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Layne Hightower, and I'm one of the Cryptid Brothers. I think everybody out there who listens to our channel, I kicked off our first episode for our channel. So yeah, I'm excited to be on tonight.
Awesome, bro. That's good to talk to you. Man, can you believe it, Layne? It's been just over a year, about a year and a half now, and gosh, we've already got over 16,000 subscribers, and we're just continuing to rock and roll, but it's really kind of flourished into something that we really never expected. Man, it's been a ride. And Lance told me that you told Lance that, hey, bro, get ready. I mean, you were right, man. Lance always says, man, Layne was right about that, because we really do get a ton of calls every day, and with people having encounters that they were skeptics, but no longer are, based on their own eyewitness accounts. So pretty unbelievable, isn't it, bro?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not like I could honestly look into a crystal ball and say, hey, this is all these people are going to call in. And, when I had my encounter back years ago in the 90s, it was exciting, scary, confusing, all these emotions, But I just knew that there was just more in myself, all the ladies and gentlemen out there that hunt and fish and camp and love the outdoors have had to have some type of encounter or sighting. It was just too hard to believe that I would be the only one, of course. So that's when I spoke to Lance. Talking about Kick Channel, and of course we got you involved as well, and it's been very successful. And yeah, again, I'm glad to be a part of tonight's episode.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and yeah, I mean, there's been some encounters that we've had that we really haven't dove into a lot and described what we've encountered. So what I want to kind of kick this off with, bro, is what happened here this past deer season. Was it rifle season or was it muzzleloader? I can't remember, bro.
Rifle season last year, November.
Okay, yeah. So, and like we've said before, we have a lot of encounters and activity down there where we camp, and this is, of course, this is remote. This is 250,000 acres of wildlife management area, thick forest, some of the thickest in Oklahoma, really. What I want to talk about is what happened. We've talked about tree falls behind your tent, and then just massive tree falls where the ground literally seems like it shakes, and everyone just stood up, from the campfire. And then you and Lance, actually, let's talk about that, and then we'll go into depth about what happened to you and Joe while you guys were hunting. But let's talk, though, first about what you and Lance heard. I guess it was a couple years ago, that scream, that massive howl, roar that you guys heard around 4 in the morning. That's awesome. I didn't hear it. You and Lance heard that?
That was a very interesting, I'm glad you brought that one up. That was a very interesting early morning, because I remember my alarm going off about 0400. And, of course, I had kept that alarm going from week to week, month to month, because about the time that I woke up to start getting around to go to work. But it went off, of course, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I instantly, I've got to go to the restroom, as we all do. So I unzipped in the tent, went around just on the right side of the tent where the pickup was parked, not too far away from it, and started doing my business. And then I started hearing this long, drawn-out yell, and it wasn't no up close, 50 to 100 yards away whooping. This was a long, drawn-out, powerful yell that echoed across the mountainsides down there in southeastern Oklahoma. So to actually hear this vocalization, I was trying to get to my phone. I was thinking, well, should I get to my phone? By the time I go back in the tent, get my phone, come out here and try to hit record, it'll be over with.
Right.
And pretty much that was about it. So there was just a long, drawn out, and whatever it was, I knew it had powerful lungs, because there's no way a human being could do that. And first of all, who's going to be up at, obviously that early of a morning? So,
yeah.
But once again, that area is well known for, cryptid creatures that live down off in there.
Go into kind of what you heard and how long, like, was each howl, not even a howl, but like a roar, however you want to describe it. How long total did this last?
Well, it was hard to distinguish as far as a start and stop. I just recall a long, drawn out yell. It was, my goodness, it probably lasted maybe a minute, and that's a long time. A minute does go by pretty quick because we're always busy doing something. But if you're just sitting there listening, a minute can go by. It seems like it's a little while. I mean,
but bro, it wasn't like a minute constant yell, was it? Or was it? I don't know. I mean, are we talking about just a consecutive multiple sounds or one continuous long yell?
But what I heard was one continuous long yell. I mean, it started out, and I'm not going to even try to mimic it because there's just no way.
Right.
But it was like just a long, drawn out, yell, and then it would subside, and then it would carry up another level, another pitch, or another higher pitch. And then it would get louder and louder. So it was like going up or building up to one solid yell.
Oh my
gosh.
That
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it was, it had a massive freaking set of lungs, right? I mean, it had to.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there's, number one, I don't know of anybody that's going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning around the campfire and start yelling, scaring the crap out of everybody else. I mean, nobody's going to be doing that, especially around deer season.
Right.
Again, this just leads to the fact that these creatures do exist, and they do live in around southeastern Oklahoma. Well known for that. It's been documented. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and we've talked about this yell before on previous episodes, and like we've already discussed there's been the tree falls twice that's happened to us, and then the whistling this past year right across the road from us while we were sitting around the campfire. There was just a whistle, and let me think how it went. It was like I mean, it sounded like just like that. Now, this was probably, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and I would say probably about 30 yards in the wood line. And I whistled back, but we were all looking at each other like, yep, they're here. So the setup that Lance had, of course, I was with my son camping, and then Lance was with his son camping next to my tent. But what we do, which is kind of a cool setup, we'll use these pop-up gazebos and then put a tarp around that gazebo, so when you walk out of your tent, you've got an area that's still protected from the elements, but you can put your gear there. So you can put a little heater in that area as well. You were actually sleeping just outside of Lance's tent in this gazebo with tarps around it. And of course, all day long, as you know, we go in and out of that corner flap, getting stuff, keeping our equipment there. So go into, bro, what led up to what happened to you while you were actually sleeping on a cot there in that gazebo. Ladies and gentlemen, this is creepy. I mean, you want creepy? This is creepy. So go ahead, bro, take it away and talk about what happened to you.
Earlier that day, I had to work, and so I'll just roll it back as far as leading upon, obviously, leading to that story.
Yeah.
But earlier that day, I had worked for about 10 to 12 hours. Upon ending work that day, I had to pick up the girls, and I had taken the kids with me. I had picked them up from school, and we had just, after my work was complete, I went to go get the girls, picked them up, and then we hit the interstate to drive. I want to say it took us about 4.5 to 5 hours to get down there. Of course, the stops that you have to do when you have kids. And so we had got there at probably at about, or if I recall, about 9:30 at night. So I was pretty tuckered out, man. Working all day, picking the kids up, get on the interstate. So when I got there at about 9:30 that evening, I was just too tired to put up a tent to do anything else. So, I just told Lance, I said, listen, if you don't mind, I'm going to sleep inside your little gazebo area, where obviously he had laid a tarp over that gazebo part, which attached to his tent. So, which left a little room, just a little area where you could throw, a mat and a sleeping bag and your pillow and, crash out for the night. And then I figured I could do that in the morning, get a cup of coffee and some breakfast and wake up a little bit. And then I could start putting it, my little camp or my little tent.
Right.
Later on that night, man, after when everybody went to bed, and I had gotten my bedroll out of the pickup, and of course the girls were with Grandpa and Grandma and everything, and they were safe and warm, and so I just got my bedroll and made my little area there. Gazebo is, and of course where Lance's little camp is, and his tent area. And I crashed. I was just gone. I was dead to the world.
Well, yeah, and let me interject real quick. So, like you said, your girls, they were with our parents, and they had a camper there, a bumper pull camper set up. So they had been there actually for several weeks, or at least a handful of weeks before we even arrived. But yeah, keep going, man.
Later on that night, now mind you, everybody's done with supper, meet and greet, and everybody's tuckered out, and everybody, went to their tents, RVs, whatever. And so I had already, down, I rolled the bedroll out, climbed in it for the most part, zipped it up, got my pillow, kind of walled around just about, 2 or 3 times till I was comfortable, and then crashed out.
Yeah.
Well, when you're so exhausted, obviously, your mind doesn't know time elapse. So I started hearing this noise, and I was like, I thought, what am I hearing? What am I listening to? I started listening a little bit more, and the tarp had been pulled back, or the flap had been pulled back where I had initially, first of all, you had to pull the flap, obviously. Lance didn't have it, but I guess he did have it bungeed down to begin with.
Yeah.
But, it adds a little type of, security for, critters trying to get up, and you have your food and your drinks and et cetera. So I didn't bungee anything back. I was just so exhausted. I just pulled the flap back, left the bungee off. When I'd laid down, it was probably about 11:30 or midnight. So I had no more than laid down for at least 2 hours. So I want to say this is probably at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the reason why I'm saying this is because after everything had taken place, I remember looking at my watch, my phone. I should say my phone because I didn't have a watch on, so I looked at my phone.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was like 1:50 a.m.
Okay.
Close to 2 a.m. But nevertheless, I'm sleeping, and then this wrestling of the tarp, the blue tarp that you can buy at any Walmart, per se, that's what Lance had around his, gazebo area. That flap lifted up, but yet it didn't go down. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's bad, or that's one of our buddies, but I'm thinking, wait a minute. That's the flap's up, but there's no headlamp, because I remember everybody had some type of a light source. So I didn't see a light. And I thought, wait a minute. Nobody's going to be walking around in total darkness without a lamp.
No doubt, man. You know that area. There's rocks everywhere, crevices. I mean, you'll roll an ankle. That ground is so hard, and then you've got these pebbles and rocks everywhere. So that's why we all have headlamps on when we go at night anywhere around the camp.
Right. And so when that flap came back and I didn't see a light, what's holding the blue tarp back? And when I looked, I just saw total darkness.
Oh, dude.
And I thought, you know what? So I could be staring at something, at a face about 5 feet away. All I know.
Yeah. Weren't your feet like toward the flap?
Yeah, my feet was actually towards that flap area. And I thought, you know what? Whatever this thing is or it is, and I knew that they exist.
Yeah.
When I say they, I'm talking about Bigfoot. So I know that they exist. And I thought, you know what? It's pulled the flap back. It's looking at me or looking in. It may or may not have the capability to actually see me. It could sense that I'm there. So I'm thinking, is this thing going to, tug on the end of my bedroll? Because I thought I didn't have a firearm.
Right.
I did have firearms, but my firearms, I was so tired and crazy because I'm not like this. But I actually left them in my pickup, unloaded, locked up, and I didn't have anything on me. And I'm not one. I mean, obviously, you can.
You're our security. I told Lance one time, I'm like, well, I don't feel secure until Layne arrives. I think it was that camping trip, that deer hunt.
Yeah. Well, it's just because of, I'm not one to do that. I was just so exhausted, of course. And
yeah.
The only thing that I had was a pocket knife. And I thought, if this thing wants to pull me up while I'm in this bedroll, in this this sack here, I mean, and right, I'm thinking in my mind, it could pull me, it could put me on the shoulder and take off with me. And the only thing that came to mind is I had a pin light, a very powerful white light.
Yeah.
The only thing I could do is I thought, wait a minute, light, I'm going to start strobing it. And maybe it'll chase this thing off, whatever this thing is, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I started hitting strobe, and I just started flashing it all through there real quick. Well, that part of that tarp went back down. Now, did I see a face when I was strobe it? No, because I was kind of freaked out, to be honest with you. Because I was like, I don't want to put this thing on a face. It'll freak me out. So I'm thinking, either it's going to pull on me or I'm going to punch it in the face or, we're going to roll around in the rocks. I don't know what's going to happen.
It's going to throw you over its shoulder and run off like 50 miles an hour through the woods.
Yeah, so, I'm going to tell you something right up front. That part of me kicked in where it's, fight or flight.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I've been there, done that. And
yeah.
So, after that happened, I immediately was whispering to Lance because he was in his tent with the flap zipped, and I was whispering. I kept saying, Lance, wake up. Did you hear that? And he was like, what? What are you talking about? And I told him exactly what happened. I said, the flap came up. He goes, you're kidding me. I said, no. I said, here's the thing about it. There was no wind that evening. We had absolutely zero wind that night.
That's right.
Something had to actually, I would guess, with an opposing thumb, pull back the tarp to look in, to kind of peer in to see what's going on. And then after I hit the strobe, it just let the flap back. And then wherever it went, only God knows, because I had walked out, and Lance goes, take my pistol. He had a 500 Smith & Wesson. I'm like, no, I'm not going to, I'm not going to shoot that thing. You got the hand cannon. I don't even know what I'm doing with it. I didn't want to actually knock myself out, so I said no. So I just went out there. I was wanting to see whatever it is so bad. I walked out with just a flashlight.
Yeah.
And, so I looked around and didn't see anything at all. And, of course, this thing could have been, 15 feet in the brush and, looking at me. But how would I have known it was anyway? Because that place, if you remember, that place is heavily wooded. And there's multiple pathways where this thing could have went. There's multiple exits.
Oh, absolutely, man. During the day, when you're in Squatch country, you're being watched. Whether you like it or not, you're being watched. And even if you're looking at through the trees and you don't see anything, they're there, they're watching. And so I think what happened, we were going in and out of that tarp all day long, 2 days, but it saw that, man, what's going on? What's inside there? I think there's a curiosity that they have, and they were just kind of so curious, and that's why at night they wait for people to go to sleep. I've heard this from previous folks who's had encounters at night, and actually from a gentleman out of Ohio who, the episode I Lived with Bigfoot, my friend, he says that they'll wait for you to go to sleep, and then they'll come in because they want to have every advantage possible, and that is you sawing logs where you're not alert enough to kind of respond to them, and also the nightfall, right? So you can't see them. So they're using that to their advantage so they can come in and kind of check things out. So I think that's kind of what happened, is their curiosity. But I didn't know this at the time. Only later I learned that what happened to you the following morning. But I think what happened when you walked out, I saw lights, or your flashlight, when you walked out, you were shining it around the camp. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah, and so I saw your light. I didn't know at the time what was going on, but I heard footsteps around my tent. And no joke, and I had to question myself, am I hearing what I'm hearing? And I did. And they were really subtle, but that makes sense that it was trying to get out of your line of sight around my tent. I think that's what happened.
A lot of people think, well, wait a minute, how can something be excessive to 7 to 8 foot tall in the possibility of weighing, say, up to 400 pounds or maybe more, but yet be so stealth-like, when it moves? We don't know a lot about these creatures. And if we do know a lot about it, obviously it's within certain agencies, and they're not going to share this information to the public. And I truly believe that, and I believe this has been ongoing for decades. But that's another story in all to itself. These creatures, masters of where they live, of their domain.
Oh, absolutely.
Masters of camouflage. To elude, when we do have encounters, I honestly think that they kind of choose when they want to be seen. Now, I'm not saying all of them are like that. I honestly think some of them slip up. I think that they elude human beings on purpose to stay away and only to, it's almost like to observe or to study us, but also at the same time always flanking us, keeping away from our area, watching us, of course, but not trying to interact unless they feel threatened, just like us. Just like a human being. When we feel threatened, we're going to do something about it. Either we're going to leave the area or we're going to fight.
I agree with you. I think that the way they can go undetected most of the time is simply by avoidance. Say a pink elephant was out in the woods. Well, you would never see it if it knew how to evade you, where, say, it kept a distance of, say, 100 yards away in thick trees. If it could hear you and smell you to avoid you, you'd never see a big old pink elephant. So, you talk about something that's actually camouflage, that blends in, that wants to evade you, because that they know that is tied to their survival to evade you, that it's only rare that you'll ever get to see one, even if it's right in front of you, unless they want you to see them, like you just said. I think the way, in regards to their feet, their anatomy of the feet, the metatarsal bones, and I won't go into super depth here, but I think that they can probably, and I could be totally off and way off on this, is they can manipulate their metatarsal bones in such a way to not make sounds as they walk. And of course, when you talk about a Bigfoot, the size of it, it's weight distributed in a large area. And if they can manipulate their feet in a way to not make sound, and then of course you've got the pads of it, it kind of makes sense that they can not make sounds when they walk for the most part, even through a bunch of leaves. Somehow the main thing is we don't know really a lot about them. So what I want to go into next, bro, is where we hunted. We went over a creek. We'll walk probably about a mile away from camp, but real thick area. where there's an old logging road's probably 10 yards wide, if that. In some areas, it's probably 5 yards wide. Joe, one of our buds that hunts with us, we went out and hunted this logging trail. So Joe went off and went to his blind, and we were hunting along probably a 300 or 400 yard area. It winds enough to where you can hunt just down the trail but not worry about shooting someone else because it's just so windy. And then you hunted probably, I don't know, 100 yards or so from Joe, and then me the same. So we hunted pretty uneventful. Unfortunately didn't get a buck, but I had to leave. And so the next day you guys went back out to that area. Tell everybody what happened to you and Joe when you went back to that area where we had previously hunted.
We had discussed about going together. Early that afternoon, we had got our gear around, and we paired up, and we started walking. And I remember we left camp on foot. And I'd say from camp to the initial trail that we started walking into, it's probably about 200-300 yard walk. I mean, my goodness, it was a pretty, I mean, it was good cardio for you. I'll just put it that way. So
I said a mile, but I mean, it's a ways.
No.
It's not quite a mile. I guess maybe it's not even a half, you think? It's hard for me to gauge it because I'm trying to think back. I mean, it was a ways. It was a ways on foot, like you said.
Well, I could have been about a half a mile too there, but yeah, I know what you mean, because the place is so heavily wooded and dense, it's hard to gauge distance.
It is.
Like you said.
It is hard to gauge distance in the thick woods because you don't have reference, man. It's all just trees. But yeah, so keep going, man.
Well, we had walked into a particular area that we liked to hunt and had been successful as far as seeing, whitetail off in there. And I had also had witnessed hogs off in there. And I love to hunt hogs. Of course, I get the thrill of hunting hogs actually more than I do whitetail anyway. From the entrance of this old logging road, and I mean, it looks like a trail when you first walk onto it, and it does. It does obviously look like a trail.
Yeah, it does.
But years prior to that, it was an old logging road.
Exactly.
You know, so over time, the hardwoods had grown up through the road and a lot of brush. So yes, there was a trail, but we had walked way off in there at least another half a mile. So, Joe and I were together, and I initially was going to drop him off at a pop-out, like a pop-out camouflage tent blind.
Yeah.
And he had spoke about that earlier about hunting there. Well, when we got there, he was like, no, he'd whisper, he's like, you know what, I think I just want to hang out with you. We had found a particular spot that we had both sat at. Basically, it was an old pine tree that had fell over, and we just straddled both sides of it. And he was hunting one direction, so we were facing opposite ways. So probably about maybe 20 to 30 minutes had elapsed. So I had just whispered to Joe, I'm going to get up and leave and walk up about another 75, 80 yards up the old logging road where it bends around the corner. And he said, okay, sure. I said, I will be back around dark. He said, okay, great. So I had left him. I had walked all the way, cautiously and quietly, all the way up about 70, 80 yards around where it started turning to go up the side of the mountain.
Well, I was going to say, Layne, so you went way past where I had hunted. This was way past where I had hunted, it sounds like, because I do remember that area, that logging road, taking a bend, but I didn't go that far. So you went super far back in there, it sounds like.
I like to do that. I like to go into an area to see what's out there, to see what's around the next tree, what's around the hill.
Right.
But I've always been that way.
No, I'm with you.
But anyway, so that's what I did. You know, I went around the corner and found a comfortable spot. And I actually stood there, you know, for a while. And then I actually got tired of standing, of course, and then I kind of sat down and kind of leaned my back up against a pine sapling. I could hear, it sounded like deer off in the trees a little bit through the thickets, just because of the trotting that you could hear. But as time elapsed, and obviously the sun's going down to dusk, I'm not joking, this was probably, there was enough light where you could silhouettes.
Okay.
that's all you could make out was about silhouettes. You couldn't, I mean, if you looked at something, you kind of had to take another look at it real quick and try to figure it out.
Yes.
But yet you knew you were looking at something because you could see just a silhouette or a black object of something. I started hearing some heavy brush moving, heavy steps. And I'm talking about something that's not being cautiously and quietly moving on a trail. This is something that's pushing brush up out of the way. Like it's, instantly I started thinking, wait a minute, why would somebody else be in here this far back? And I started listening, and I didn't hear any human activity, meaning any vocalization or any type of communication or
no voices or anything.
Or cussing or swearing. Yeah, no voices, nobody. And I thought, wait a minute, that's not humans. That's not a grown man in there. There's no way.
Yeah.
And that ruled, and to me, in my mind, that's what it ruled out. I thought, okay, no, that's not a man. Yeah, well, whitetail doesn't move like that. They're really stealth-like. I mean, if anybody has been either a hunter or an outdoorsman, they move very cautiously and quietly to keep the survivability up for them.
Yeah, they don't thrash through brush. You were talking about, okay, well, what about, say, like a big boar? Could that have been a possibility?
I started thinking about the big boar scenario or a big sow or hogs in general.
Yeah.
But I pulled that out, too, because in general, when hogs move, they're vocal. You know, they're very vocal when they move anyway.
Yeah, you can hear snorts.
Hogs do move erratic, and they're very loud, but they're really vocal, because I've hunted hogs for years, and hogs are very, very vocal when they move. They communicate a lot as they're feeding to another area, from point A to point B to point C. So I ruled that out. Now, the only two things I could come up with was a black bear or a cryptid.
Yeah.
And I honestly think, obviously, in my opinion, that everything moves is a Bigfoot. No. But just the way it presented itself and how loud it was moving, like it was busting branches and moving and just pushing like a bulldozer through this stuff. And I'm thinking the only thing that came to mind was a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That it possibly was out there and saw Joe and I, basically was paralleling us to the side of, hey, you know what? I'm not going to have this, you know, or I'm pissed and I'm busting this brush out of the way, moving very erratic, stomping around. And so I listened to this activity go on for, my goodness, for at least about 3 to 5 minutes at least. I couldn't see anything in there. So as far as from where I was to where it was probably about 40 yards maybe. I couldn't see anything. I could just listen as it moved extremely loud. So after all this had taken place, by this time it's black.
Oh man.
You know, it's dark, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
So I turned the switch on to my headlamp, and then of course I have a steam up the flashlight. And I'm just scanning that area, looking around. And I thought, okay, you know, I've been in areas, you know, overseas where it gets crazy.
Just so the audience can understand what you're talking about a little bit, I mean, you served our country, you've seen some crazy, horrifying things and been through a lot overseas. You don't get spooked easy. When you heard this, did your antennas go up and like, okay, this could be a Squatch and, you know, you got to get ready to rock and roll if you need to? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
I mean, yes and no. I thought, well, I honestly think it was a Bigfoot in that area at that particular point in time. It had moved through the brush around us, out of the way. But yes, there's always going to be a sense of safety on my part. Because if something, you know, walks out of the brush, you know, 30 feet away from me or 40 feet or whatever the distance is, I'm not going to instantly start shooting at it.
No.
But I'm not saying I wouldn't get nervous. I mean, I've already seen one of these creatures. I know what they look like.
Yes.
I mean, would I get nervous again if I saw one? Yeah. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I mean, I'm human too. I get scared. I have emotions just like my next door neighbor does.
Absolutely.
But something, you know, walked out and on the trail and just turned around and looked at me. And would I kind of freak out a little bit? Well, sure I would. But I would only, you know, defend my life if I knew this thing was leaping at me or showing some display of aggression anything crazy like that. I mean, I've seen craziness, but it was under different circumstances.
The thickness of the forest there and the trees, it's almost like a curtain. And you would never see anything until it literally stepped out in front of you. That's how thick this is, right? I mean, is that a good description?
Oh, absolutely. About a year before that, during high-powered rifle, I had hogs come up behind me. And when I turned around, I just saw all these black silhouettes around me. However, I've hunted hogs long enough to know what they were, what it was behind me.
Yes.
But I did not know what was in front of me making that noise. The only conclusion I could come up with was a cryptid. Whatever this thing was, it was just wild, a rat, busting brush, snapping stuff, pushing stuff out of the way. And I honestly thought, what in the hell is that? With the safety off.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I thought, you know what? If it's trying to push its way towards me, and I honestly started, okay, what am I going to do? The only thing I can do is stand and fight, if need be. So it didn't. It did not do that. It kept pushing its way until it went out of, not sight, but sound, earshot. I couldn't hear it anymore. I listened to it till it completely faded out of earshot distance.
Wow.
By that time, I had turned around and walked back to Joe's position, and then Joe said, hey, did you hear this noise? Did you hear what happened? And I was like, what do you mean what happened? And he said, man, I was sitting here and heard a massive racket. I mean, brush busting, pushing up out of the... I said, yeah, I heard that too. I said, it must have flanked you on your side. It got you on your side. And he said, what the hell was that thing? I said, exactly. You just said thing, because I don't know what it is. It's a thing to me too. I had no idea what this thing was. A bear, I don't think bear move that way. I don't think they just push their way off. Bears take the path of least resistance just like any other creature does, just like human beings do. We utilize least path of resistance while we're hunting, camping, fishing, because we don't like a lot of things in front of us. We don't like to constantly work and push things out of the way. Basically,
yeah. That's a good point, Layne.
Yeah, we really don't. I mean, human beings like the path of least resistance, just like animals. Whitetail have trails that they have utilized for years and years and years. Rabbits, hog trails, coyote trail. I mean, all these creatures of habit utilize their trails for their patterns of movement throughout the day. Whether it's going to a watering hole trail, to a field to feed, a milo field or a wheat field or whitetail. Hogs go to their watering hole, but yet they always take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Pushing brush up out of the way is trying to escape from something else.
Well, here's my take on that. I agree with that. If you're trying to elude an area quickly, you're going to take the path that you just want to get away. And whether you make noise or not, it's really a back burner issue when your whole goal is to get the heck out of Dodge. So I really think probably, and this is just a thought, that it was getting dark, like you said, pretty much dark, and now they have the upper hand on you because you had the upper hand on it, likely being a Bigfoot, by having the gun. But now that it's dark, it wants you the heck out of there, and it's going to let you know that it's there. So if it didn't want to have you detect it, it would have not made a sound. But it made a sound for a reason, to say, hey, I'm here. I'm the big dog now. It's night. Get out of here. This is where I live. This is where I hunt. And, of course, we're talking deer season, right? And we know good and well that deer is on the menu for them as well. So I think that's probably, again, I could be totally way off and wrong about that, but I think it wanted you guys to know that, hey, I'm the big kid on the block, and you little human weaklings with your guns, get out of here. Of course, like you said, Joe heard the same thing and freaked him out as well. But I guarantee you, Layne, don't you think this is the case? That there is nobody, I would bet you that no human except us ever walks on that area because it's just so remote. There's no road into this area. This logging road, by the way, it's not used. There's trees growing up through the middle of this logging road, so nothing's coming down this logging road at all. There's no human activity back there. I mean, this is way, way, way off the beaten path, off of the main roads. Of course, we hunt, what would you say, maybe 5 miles into the forest, maybe even further than that. What I want to talk about next, Layne, Dave on one of the last episodes talked about me having a picture of a cryptid, and I do. And I'm going to post it, but before I do that, I kind of want to lay some groundwork talking about the area where I took the picture. And Layne, as you know, you were with me, and it was only after the fact, after months and months went down the road actually before I actually saw the cryptid in the picture. And I know that when I sent it to you and Lance, you guys were like, what the heck? Yeah, Frank, thanks for calling us. We appreciate it. Go ahead and start wherever you'd like. Tell us about your story.
Okay, well, I live 2 miles north of, you know where it's at?
I've heard of it, yes.
Okay, it's about 2 miles south of Tulsa. A little bitty town. Anyway, this happened back in 1949. I was about 9 years old.
Right.
And it was in the fall of the year. And my dad and the neighbor was out quail hunting. And their dogs run into a persimmon thicket. And the dogs come out and just cut up. And something whipped them bad. So anyway, Tom was ahead of my father by probably 100 yards or so. Anyway, Tom got in there. He seen this huge monkey in a tree. So he shot it and killed it. And by the time my dad got up there, Dad told him that he screwed up. He shouldn't have killed it. Anyway, they dragged it up to the house. Tom hung it up by its front arms from the rafters in the barn.
Okay.
And that's where they had it at. And Dad said that he told Tom he shouldn't have shot it because he said there's going to be, we're going to have trouble over it. And sure enough, the trouble just started. Dad was told us about when he was just in his teens. He lived down in McCurtain, Oklahoma, working in the lumber mill down there. And they stayed out in lumber camp. They lived in the camp all week, and then on the weekends they'd come to town, you know.
Uh-huh.
So one of the loggers down there, he shot one of them. A booger kept coming in stealing food out of the camp. So this one guy shot one. And that was a screw up because the next day he didn't come in for evening meal, and they went and looked for him. And they found him out there with a tree on top of him. Apparently the one he shot threw the tree on top of him and killed him.
He injured a Bigfoot? Was that the thought?
Right. He shot it because it was stealing food out of their kitchen tent.
Yeah.
So he shot it, and he shouldn't have done that because, like I say, the next day it killed him. They all knew what had killed him. He shot it like that evening, and then the next evening they couldn't find him, and they went looking for him, and they found him laying out there with a tree on him.
Oh, boy.
Whatever it was, it knew who shot him, you know. But they seen him all the time. My dad said that they'd see him 2 or 3 times a week down there working out in the timber, you know. He was just a teenager back then. He was working in the lumber mill. We didn't get, the only time we got to go hunting is if Dad was with us. But he wouldn't let us go down in the woods no more.
Yeah, I can understand.
I think what it was,
sure.
You know, Dad was raised up around them, but he probably didn't think there was anything up there where we was at.
Yeah.
Until Tom shot that young one. Whenever y'all get around and everybody gets there and
yeah,
got a day loose for lunch, we'll holler, and I can meet you up there somewhere.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank. We're definitely excited about doing that, and I'll get with Lance and we'll get things squared away and holler back at you. But again, thank you so much for telling us your great story. We really appreciate it. We'll be hollering at you.
Sounds like a winner.
All right, sir. You have a great day.
Okay. You too.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Frank. Bye-bye. Hi, Abby. Thanks for taking the time to tell your very amazing, terrifying encounter with a creature that you saw at your window as a child, so I'll just let you take it away.
I lived all over the country. My dad liked to move around. He didn't like to settle in one place. He moved around a lot. But, yeah, I'm currently living in New Mexico. But I guess I spent most of my childhood in Minnesota, which is where the incident happened. We were on the Mississippi River. We were kind of out in the middle of, we weren't completely isolated. There were some other houses and people around, but we were in the wooded area, so we were kind of secluded from our neighbors. I think I was 10 just from the memory of the way our bedroom was configured. And the house had windows. They were high windows. I don't know how high, but my dad's about 5'8", 5'9", and when he'd mow the lawn, you'd see like just the top of his head, tall windows. And so I woke up, it was at night, looked out the window, and there was something out there, and I figured out what the heck it was. And at first I thought it was wolf something, because it looked like a wolf's head. It kind of looked in, and when it would turn its head, because it was, I think there was some sort of moon. Probably not a full,
right?
Because there's some light, but I saw like the animal flat eye flash.
Okay.
And I was trying to figure out what the heck it was, and then kind of started moving, and it freaked me out, and I closed my eyes and put my head under the covers. Just kind of sat there. There's a part of me, like when I told my family, they were like, aha, yeah, you're probably made it up in your head. Feeling in the back of your neck when something's not quite right.
Right.
Yeah, I remember having that.
So, did something wake you up, or were you already awake, was looking out the window?
I was born with spina bifida effect. And so I have like a lot of bone issues. So sometimes like I'll just get a twinge and it'll wake me. It's probably what happened. And it wasn't like right when I woke up. I was trying to get back.
Describe again. And so you saw some movement.
Yeah.
From there, like describe what you saw if you can remember.
Okay. So I looked out the window and it was already there. It looked like a wolf or a dog in the window. It had the pointy ears and the muzzle. It was kind of like just hovering in the window. I distinctly see that head. And it was kind of moving around it. I don't remember how long. It could have been like 5 seconds and it felt like 2 hours. But then I looked again and it was gone.
And did you see that it was looking away, or was it actually looking into the window at you?
Kind of half and half. It didn't look directly in the window, but it was kind of like glancing in the window.
And did you see it just walk away? Or?
No, I looked up and it was there, and then it was like, I saw the eyes flare. I was 10 at the time, so something like that. I closed my eye.
Wow. Did you get a sense at the time about the size? Was that hard to estimate, or would you say that did it kind of fill the window? Or
it's hard. It was about, I think the window was across, like half to 2/3. Of the window, and then I think its neck was above the window. I'm not sure if I could actually see all the ears, or if I'm just thinking. I know what it's supposed to look like, and so I'm projecting.
Right. I know it's hard.
Yeah. The window. I mean, my dad's 5'8", and just see the top of his head when he would mow the lawn. So it had to have been, probably the shoulders would have been where my dad ended.
Okay. So yeah. So the bottom of the window, you're saying when he was doing the push mower, you could see his head at the bottom.
Just like the top.
This was actually the full face, at least.
Yeah, it was a full head, full face.
I see. So, like you said, you told your family, and
I wake up in the middle of the night with this weird ass story, and
yeah. Beyond your encounter, had you heard of anybody else in that area growing up, or actual sighting?
Not that I know of. Not that I can remember.
The countryside, you mentioned it was a rural area. Is that correct?
Yes. The Mississippi actually is 50 feet in our backyard.
Wow. And what time of year was this?
It was summer.
And you never heard any tapping or weird noises? This is just a visual that you saw?
Yeah, it was a visual.
Wow. Yeah, that's a frightening story. Have you, has that sparked your interest in this at all?
It's something that always kind of held my interest, but nothing major.
And you said the eyes went kind of a moonlit night somewhat, and then it kind of turned a certain direction. You noticed glare.
Yeah. Yeah, like when cats at night, when there's light hits their eye, reflection.
What color, if you remember? Do you remember what color that eye shone?
Like a light blue or whitish.
I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a bunch. Thanks, Abby. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.